I have this board. This is off of a 50-inch rear projection television. It's a Sony. And a friend of mine, he said that it works for a while. There's some numbers on it. Don't know this. But anyway, so this is the primary. This is the AC side. As you can see, the separation. This is the secondary side. This is for powering all the lower voltage components in the television. But anyway, it's a rear projection TV, and everything is working on it. But he said after 20, 30, 40 minutes, it depends. Some days the picture starts like tearing, and then the picture goes out completely, and then the audio just plays, and after that he turns it off, let it cool off for a little while, and then he turns it back on, and it comes back, and picture is normal, sound is normal, everything works. And then after 20, 30, 40 minutes or so, the picture starts tearing and cutting out. This is just a power supply board right now. There's 3 boards on it. There's a power supply board, then you have your high voltage for the picture tubes board, and then there's another board for all your inputs that everything plugs into. I'm going to pull out each one of those separately, and what I'm going to do just with these boards is I'm going to like start in this corner, and just kind of, as you can see, it's dirty. Start in this corner and just kind of scan across. I got some magnified eyeglass things, and I'm going to check all these solder pads. Just scroll through the whole board, looking for any like solder joints that need to be reflowed, because that's usually what happens when your TV cuts off. And you turn it off, let it cool down, and it comes back up normally. So what I'm going to do, this is, like I said, this is the power supply board. It's the first board I pulled out. I'm just going to go through and check all these little connections, just to make sure that none of the solder connections have broken. I can't put the camera and solder. You can see those big connections. Where am I at? Right here. Right here. A lot of times the big connections, you can see if there's any kind of like circle around them to where the connection has cracked. And then after a period of time, it heats up and it expands more and it makes less contact. That's usually the cause of a short, or not a short, but a break in one of these connections that gets hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, and it just breaks that solder joint. So I'm just going to go over this board. Like I said, the TV does work just fine. It just, after a little bit of time, it just cuts off. The video does. The audio stays on. So it's still getting power to the TV, but there's no video. So the second board I'll be pulling out will be the high power side, I guess, where the transformer is because it's a rear projection, so it has 3 picture tubes inside, red, green, and a blue, and they're like a regular CRT TV, and they shine up on a mirror, and the image on the mirror gets condensed into one image, and it reflects it back out on the screen. That's how rear projection TVs. It's from like 2003, 2000. The early 2000s, they're popular in the late 80s, 90s, rear projection, and you could get a huge screen. Yeah, you get a huge screen. I mean, they had 60, 70-inch TVs, but they were all rear projection, and the TV weighed, 300 or 400 pounds, not like the flat panel LED screens they have today, where you can get a 90-inch TV and one man can carry it, whereas a 50-inch TV weighs 200 and some pounds. You couldn't manage it by yourself. So, so what I'm going to do, like I said, I'm just going to just go over this board. I'll show some little, if I find anything on here, I'll turn the video camera on so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I kind of scanned it, but I didn't really look at it. Everything looks pretty good on here, but I'm going to do like I said, a section. I'm just going to go through this section, checking all these connections, especially the bigger connections with the bigger components. Anything like with a heatsink. The capacitors are usually pretty good, but anything with a heatsink is a heat source. So you want to check these devices that are connected to these heat sinks. Like this is a fairly chunky size, looks like a transistor of some sort. Right here is another chunky one. Anytime you have a transformer, you know, check those pins on these coils down here. They're probably transformers. Looks like a relay, a couple of relays. The capacitors all look pretty good. I don't see any swelling, or usually what happens when a capacitor goes bad, I'll show you that one right here, where it's flat. See how it's flat at the top? That's what you want on your capacitors. Now, I'm not going to check all these capacitors and make sure, because the TV does work, like I said. I just want to see if there's anything like swelling on the caps, because what happens is there's a liquid in here and it dries up and then it cooks, and then these caps on here, they have these creases in them, and what that's made to do is to when the gas expands and it gets hot, it'll rupture this top and make letting the smoke out kind of thing, and then that capacitor starts losing its values, its impedance and everything else, and then that causes problems along whatever circuit it's in. So all these feel just fine. Like I said, I've just kind of scanned it over. Everything looks good here. I don't think it's a power supply issue. I think it's the high voltage board that's causing the issue with his TV. But I'm going to, like I said, just start scanning over this thing. And if I find any kind of loose connection, or it looks like it's could be bad, I'll try to get the camera in so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm just going to go reflow solder. I got solder here. You know, I got my solder and I got my soldering iron, and I'm just going to heat these up, reflow the solder into them, make sure everything looks good. If I have to, I can take the solder off and just put new solder on there. But for right now, I'm just going to check these out, and I'll put it back in the TV, and I'll bring the other board out here when I get done with this. But yeah, I mean, if a TV works for a while and then it just starts cutting off or acting up, usually it could be a capacitor, or it could be a solder connection that is going bad. And you'll be able to see it because you'll have like a ring, like on this one right here. See, there's nothing there. See how it's perfectly smooth in those two? You would notice like a little ring. There's not, like right there at the end of that, there's like a little bit of but that may be just a solder. So I need these big connections, big pads. You know, you can kind of see where the big connections are, and the transformer here in the middle. A lot of times you might have a circle around those where they get warm. You know, so that's basically what I'm going to do. I just want to kind of show you. And I don't have the model number right off the top of my head right now, but I'll put it in the description of what the TV is. But I'm just going to go through and look at this and just kind of go over it, and if I find anything, I'll let you know. Okay, I'm hoping you can see this right in here. This thing will focus. There is just this one little component right there. If it'll focus on that, let's see if I can focus on that. It made it worse. Right there, there's a little ring. If you can see that, there's a little ring around the base. Let's see if I can have something to point. A little drill bit. If you see on this one, there is a little, let me get a different angle. There's a little ring around there, and then this one, there's a little tiny ring. It's kind of hard to see because this phone won't focus for me, but you see that little ring there? That's what I've been looking for. There's a little one right here, small little, you see the ring coming around the side of it. That's the only things I've noticed. I've checked all these big connections from like the transformers and the transistors and MOSFETs, whatever they are, because I haven't looked at them, the numbers on them. But that's those are the only two that I've seen. That one right there has got, you see that little ring on there around the edge, and then this one has got like a little circle. Let me see a light. Hang on, let me find a light for you. Okay, I've gotten those soldered right there, right there. Looks messy, but, and then I was looking, and if I can get my light, this little piece right here, if I can get my light right, yeah, you can kind of see it right there near that 5012 where the 2 is. You can kind of see it, and then this one near the FB5005, that little pin right there, and then this little one right here. See the little crack on it. I can't really zoom in without going autofocus, but those two, I mean, they're not really, but I'm going to solder them anyway. There's another one right there. So you can kind of see the little cracking around, if you can see that. Let's see if I can get my light on there. Kind of hard to see that little divot, and that's what I'm going over and just checking. If I see any more, I'll let you know. Right there. Sorry, camera work sucks, but right there at the L5008, right in the middle of the screen. Right there at my tip of my fingernail, you can kind of see how the cracking around it. That's what I'm working on. Alright, so I went through the board, checked all the connections. Everything looks really good. There wasn't many, probably 7, 8 little connections I just redid. Some of them I went through. Transformer here, just resoldered those, just checked. It seems like a lot, but if you start in one section, work your way across, get you a bright light. I have this little headlight that I use, and I was just, scanning with it. So that one looks really good. I'm really thinking it's the high voltage side. So that's the next board I'm going to get, and we'll bring it back. These are really easy to get in, these Sony boards. You just line up the screw holes. There was one there, and there's one right there in the middle. So you can this thing will only go in one way. Plus, there's a notch right here. You can't get the square in there. So that's a good little handy thing to note if you're ever taking one of these boards off the chassis, because it comes on this mounting thing, and then this thing mounts into TV vertical like this. So I can't video over there because it's dark and I don't have many hands to video and everything else, but I'll show you once I have it completed. Just make sure when you're doing this, have a bright light and you're checking those solder connections on the back. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one back in, hook it up, and take the next board out.